So it is an honor to be here with you ladies, and just know that you girls are working towards your education. In speaking today, I really want to know that I'm answering your questions in regards to what it is you want to learn for this presentation. The last thing I want you guys to do is waste your time and just be like, oh, this is boring, I won't be here, right? I want you guys to leave inspired. I want you ladies to leave asking questions. How can I further help my loved ones, my family, the caregivers, the babies in my life, whether they be yours or someone else or the families, right? Are there any specific questions or topics you really want me to touch on today? Raise your hand, let me know. Anything specifically? Any great questions? Fantastic. So that means that I get the opportunity to school you guys somewhat, and then you'll be inspired and ask questions, right? So if you don't ask questions, one, either the speaker was boring, or two, something didn't pull your heartstrings. Make sense? All right. So let's first start with the topics. I am a certified infant massage facilitator. What is that? What is a facilitator? It means that I help caregivers, whether that be mom, that be dad, auntie, grandma, whoever taking care of the infant. I help them facilitate a better bonding experience with the baby and an attachment through physical touch. Any of you ever gotten a massage in here? Anyone? Massage? Do you guys like it? Yeah, it's okay. I guess it's alright if it's done correctly. And it's the same thing for infants. So I'll touch on that after I've provided to you a base about infant development and attachment, right? So let's start with development. I want you ladies to imagine that you are this beautiful pot, you are this beautiful flower. Pick whatever color you want. And as it grows, you see it coming up from the pot, and then you see a little flower. And it grows and it grows and it grows. But as you ladies know, because you're all intelligent in here, right? You're Mount ladies. That if it doesn't have sun, if it doesn't have water, if it doesn't have the right environment to grow in, it will die. It will not flourish and grow and bring out more flowers. Babies are the same way for infants. So in starting with infant development, it doesn't start since the day they're born. It actually starts in utero. It starts when the carrier has them there, right? The mother. When the baby is in utero, there are many studies that would state that it's very important to take that in consideration and others that contradict it. I'm not here to say what side I'm on, I'm just here to share this information. Some studies have shown that the environment is where the baby starts to develop its attachment. Knowing the sound of the mother kicking when they talk to the baby, or touch. Knowing who is touching it where. Have any of you ever had that experience with a family member, yourself, or a loved one? Where you hear the sound or the voice and the baby starts kicking? Yeah, that's so important, and that gives you a window into knowing, wait a minute, this starts even before you meet your parents, even before you meet this earth. It starts there. As the flower needs the beautiful pot to grow, so does the child. So in infant development, it's important that the mother obviously have good nutrition, right? How about sleep habits? The child in utero will pick that up. If the mother has a hard time sleeping or digesting certain things, it's possible the child is going through the same thing. As a facilitator of infant massage and a psychotherapist that's licensed and working with families, I have seen some cases where the mother is pregnant and has so much stress, it affects the baby. The baby says, hey mom, what's going on in there? What's going on? There's too much going on here. So then the mother starts to release stress hormones. Imagine if you're a plant and you have way too much sun, just way too much. It's bright all the time. You're hype, you're extra all the time. Imagine what the baby's feeling. That is so important to consider, right? Yeah. Do any of you ladies in here know what the stress hormone does in utero to the baby? What it could cause, some side effects? No? Well, have you guys ever been around a stressed person? What happens to you?
You get stressed too.
You get stressed too! That's what happens to the that stress, and they're not worried about growing their ears or growing their heart according to what they need to. They're worried just about survival. Is mommy okay? And even if the baby doesn't have words for it, they don't know exactly what to do with this information, they are aware that that's what's going on. You guys ever felt something but you didn't know what it was or what to call it? You just knew you felt that though? Has that ever happened to you? Because that's a human experience for us. The baby feels that. And I think that's very important to address that from the get-go as we're talking about this, right? All right. So then, another very, very important factor is the self-care that the caregivers have. Post-birth and pre-birth, right? We talked about the pre, about the factors of taking care of yourself and having the stress level. But what about after the infant is born? How important is it to have self-care for the caregiver? It might not always be the birthing mother. It might be the aunt. It might be the grandmother. Maybe the birth mother isn't around, right? Who is caring for this child? How many of you in here are drivers? Drive a car? How many? Excellent. How many of you have ever driven a car in here in their life? Excellent. So then we have a couple drivers in here, right? The reason I bring up the example of cars is this. If you drive a car that doesn't have gas, what happens? It breaks down, you end up in the 405, you're stuck. You gotta call somebody, right? They'll come pick me up, I fill up gas, I was cheap, right? Or you just didn't have time. You didn't have money, you didn't have resources, it slipped your mind. We are the same way as humans. And I think it's so interesting that we have, a couple seconds to think about, oh, my car needs gas, it's telling me, okay, I gotta go fill up. But when our tummy, our gas isn't there, we tend to ignore it. I've been guilty of that. How many of you in here are like, oh, I gotta skip lunch, I have other stuff to do, or those Cheetos look good, right? Yeah, and that's the gas we need. Why am I talking about this? Why is this so important? Because as the caregivers of an infant that's a newborn, that's crying and going to the bathroom and needing all this loving care, if your gas tank isn't full, it's not going to be a good relationship. It's going to be resentful. Resentful means that the caregiver, whoever it is going to say, oh, this baby keeps crying, and I don't know why. And instead of love and care and affection that infant should be having, it's a negative response. And that's when you get to what we call burnout. Burnout is, I haven't slept, I haven't had time to eat, I haven't washed my hair. All you ladies, you know what that feels like, not having time to wash your hair. These are all factors that affect the baby, and the baby feels that. Perhaps the caregiver even starts to let the baby just keep on crying and crying and crying. Does that make sense? Any questions so far about that? Yeah? All right, you guys with me, right? Excellent. So in self-care, I remember the first time I ever heard that, and that was at the Mount. I was in grad school. I was 25. I heard the word, I heard it, I know what self is and I know what care is, but I don't know what self-care is. I was embarrassed. I was sitting in class just like you ladies, and I was like, what is that? Being a Latina that grew up in a home where my parents worried about making rent or making bills on time, I never heard that word. Take time for self-care, take care of you, you do you, boo. No, I never heard that in my life. And then my professor explained to me that self-care is whatever activity or purpose you have in order to fulfill your cup, to fill your gas tank. It hit me like a ton of bricks. It was the first time in my life that it was okay to take care of me before others. Culturally speaking, there's a lot of cultures that demand that as a female, that as a woman, as a caretaker of little ones, of infants, you give, and you give to them first, and you're last. In some cultures, you are the last one to eat. You're the last one if you need anything, because it's give, give, give. As a mother, as a female, you should be caring and giving. But when you have an infant, that will not work. There needs to be a balance there between what you need and what the baby needs, for the baby and infant to be okay. So self-care is very important. And right now, it's a beautiful training ground for you ladies to learn what feels good to me. Is it a pedicure? Is it listening to Drake on the way home? What is it? Whatever you like. So I'd like you to stop and take a moment and tell me what your self-care is. Just throw it out there. Yes?
I think listening to music or talking to others.
Yes, absolutely. So communication, connection with others. Anyone else? Yes. Food. What kind? Yes. Ice cream. Yes.
Watching anime.
Anime? Yes. Yes. Watching TV. Yes. I'm sorry? Playing with your dog. Yes, absolutely. Touch is a very important thing, right? Anyone else with their self-care? Nothing is too dumb or too awesome. I've heard it all. My favorite is pedicures. Not self-care. Mishka?
I like manicures.
Yes! So we match, right? You need to learn what works for you. Some of you in here might be caregivers, some of you may not be. Because just because you don't have a child doesn't mean that you don't care for another. You might have a younger sibling, right? A younger cousin, someone you look out for. How can you take care of them if you're not okay? It's a lot like the airplane example, right? When you fly, they tell you if there's an emergency, put your mask on first, and then the next person, right? The child or the person you're taking care of. If you're not good, they're not going to be good. And I want this to stay with you ladies for a lifetime. Take care of you so you can take care of others. That is so important in regards to infants. Now, going back to the topic of touch. For self-care, a lot of us like that human connection, that touch, that knowing I'm not alone. Somebody knows that I exist. That's what we call the development of attachment. Have any of you in here had intro to psych yet? Yes, excellent. Did you ladies learn about attachment styles? Excellent. So this will be a quick review for some of you and an intro for others. Attachment. There's a book even out on it, and I absolutely love it. I read this book every year, and I recommend it to clients that I work with. Because if you're not aware of your style, then it makes it much harder to get what you need. And the question is, where does this start? Where is it established? Where do we get that stamp that says, you're this type or you're this type? This is how. An infant, like my son Sol here, they are picked up, they're fed, they're changed, right? On a daily, hourly basis. And they learn what works. So if my style as a mother is to change him every 2 hours, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, what do you think he's going to expect at 8 o'clock? To get changed. Children love routine. It's so important. It's imperative to their development. They want to know, okay, if mom fed me yesterday for lunch, I'm going to get lunch today. And that's what creates a secure attachment. Secure attachment is created through consistency. Consistency is the pattern, right? If my mom says that bedtime's at 8 o'clock, tomorrow it's 8 o'clock bedtime, right? And you keep that pattern. It helps the child feel safe, and it helps them know, is my caregiver loving? Will they provide for me what it is I need in my life? Basic needs of a human. Does anybody know what those are? The Maslow's hierarchy of needs? That pyramid that looks like the food pyramid, but it's not. The needs? Let's fill those in, ladies. What are basic human needs? Food. What else do we need? Shelter. What else? Clothing. So we have food, shelter, clothing. How about air? Do we need air? A little bit, right? What about water? We need water to survive. And there's extras too. And I call them extras because some people would venture to say that they're not necessities, but as human nature they are. And one of them is sex. And in regards to that, it's reproduction, of letting the human race continue, right? In that regards. So making sure that our species continues, just like more flowers leave their seeds, right? As well, there's another need that a lot of people don't think about to survive, and that's emotional connection, emotional development. Hey, do I exist? Do I matter? Do I belong? Do I feel part of a community? Do I feel part of something? This is very important, and if people don't feel that, they will not survive. They're what we call the living dead. They walk around, and yeah, they eat, they sleep, they go to the bathroom, but they don't feel. Have any of you guys experienced that or know someone who has or seen that? You just see somebody and they're dead inside. And it's the same look you'll see in a child that doesn't look at their mommy. So I want you guys to point that out, okay? So this is important examples for you ladies to learn. If you ever see a child and whoever holds them gently and nicely, but they don't look at them, they don't sincerely have eye contact, they look around, they're not really about it. They're very detached. That's because they don't trust the person that's holding them. They don't trust that their needs are going to be met. That's an insecure attachment. Insecure. Because they're not getting what they need. I'll give you girls another example. I worked with a case where the caregiver had lost another child. And they had an infant. Right? They had an infant, but they had another child that passed away. That caregiver, the mother, she was the walking dead. She was there with me in the room, but she wasn't there. She would just look dead straight, dead eyes. Her body was there, but her spirit wasn't. And her baby felt that. I could see that when I looked at the baby on her lap, the baby would just kind of look around and wouldn't really be connected with the mother because the mom wasn't there. She wasn't attentive to the baby's needs. And that's when you know that that's insecure attachment. When that baby grows into a toddler or a young child, that baby's not going to be sure that mom is going to meet their needs, right? And that's how insecure development is formed, how it's established. The opposite is true for secure attachment. A parent that's there for you, they got you, you're going to eat on time. If you're cold, what do the caregivers say? Are you cold? Do you need a jacket? Do you need a blanket? Okay, let me get that for you. And then they cry out again. I want to see Barbie. Okay, let's put on Barbie, right? And then they learn, I can trust this person, right? There's this amazing video that came out in the 70s from a researcher. And I want to say it's John Goodall, correct?
Which one?
The one about the baby in the hut and the different attachment styles.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
So there's this research, and I can send your professor the link for you ladies to look at it. And it describes the different attachment styles that the babies have. And it's a beautiful thing. It was done in Africa, and they had different moms interact with their children. And the first one, what they did is they're playing with the baby, they're having fun, and then they ask the mother to leave the hut, to leave their home. And the way the child reacts identifies what type of attachment they have to the baby. So the first one, when the mom left, what do you ladies think the baby did? Cried out, Mama's gone, I need Mama, I'm gonna die, right? And then when the mom came back, the baby was good. The baby was happy and googie and just giggling, right? And they allowed themselves to be held by the mother. So they tried it with different mothers. And with some, what you notice is that when the baby was left and then the mom came back, there was differences. And that's where they discovered that besides secure attachment and insecure, there's different styles. And one of them is avoidant and insecure as well as dismissive. And in hearing those terms, there's different researchers that say, well, this is this or this is that. This is what you want to look for. One of the mothers left the hut and then came back in the room. And the baby, put him down here, the baby did this. The baby did, pick me up, Mom. Come on, come get me. Right? They put out their hands and they did this. The mom comes, picks up the baby, and then the baby does this. So as she's holding the baby goes, and turns his head when the mom wants to give a kiss. The baby's resentful. The baby's upset. The baby did not forget that the mom left. She left him. Can you imagine? What a horrible mom. So then they learn, the baby, that, okay, I'm asking mom for what I need, but I know that she's going to leave me again later. They hold resentment, right? So that might be what some researchers call avoidant. The child is avoidant of the mother. They don't want to deal. It's the same thing when they grow up, a child, and then somebody tries to confront them about a problem or a challenge that they're having, and they say, I don't want to talk about this right now. This is how adults form their attachment from infancy. Is anybody like that? Where they're just like, I don't want to deal with this, no drama, I'm good. Anyone? Yeah. And that's your attachment style. And you can learn more about this in the book, Attached. And that's on Amazon. You can get it on there, right? You can get it in the bookstores, Barnes & Nobles, anywhere where they sell books. It's a #1 seller. Pretty great.
It's a great book. I'm with her. It would be great.
And it helps you as a person. Wouldn't you want to know before you meet someone special that you care about what your style is? What you're going to feel when they say, hey, I can't come kick it with you. I got stuff to do. And you're like, what baby are you going to be? Are you the baby says, okay, great, go do your thing, I'll be here? Or are you the baby says, nope, I want to talk to you? Which one are you, right? Yeah.
And it's also, it's important is that it affects all your relationships, right? And what she's saying, right, the foundation, it all starts with infancy. That's when we form it, and it affects us through adulthood. So it's important.
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't think about it like, oh, it's just a baby, that's just what they do. No, this is where it starts. And the tough part is that we have to pick up the broken pieces as the young women that we are in this room, right? And what I mean by that is other people provide an experience to us, our caregivers, our aunties, our uncles, whoever it might be that raised us. But we are the ones that are responsible for fixing ourselves, to be the best version of ourselves, to love another person wholeheartedly instead of being a broken cup. Nobody wants to buy a broken cup. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to buy a broken cup. I want a brand spanking new one, right? Drink my tea, right? Yeah. So, what I encourage you ladies to do today, obviously you're not going to get the whole spiel in the short amount of time that we have, but do your research on your own attachment style. That way you understand what's going on in yourself as well as infants that you meet or you will work with in the future in your own career, as nurses, as psychologists, as social workers, as whatever it is you choose to do, even in business. Perhaps you can develop something that will one day change the world in how we react, correct? All right, so once again, there is secure, there is insecure, there is dismissive, avoidant, and some research would like to say that there's different types in regards to that, so do your research, right? All right, so today we went over self-care for caregivers. We went over development of an infant in utero, and we also went over attachment. Now, what I would like to share with you today is infant massage.
Can you also talk a little bit about some of the challenges you experienced with providing services?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, let's say that I have a case, and as a massage for infant facilitator, I have had challenges, and that's to say that there is no career out there, ladies, that's not going to have problems or challenges. And I don't even like the word problem, I like the word challenge because it indicates that there is a solution to it, right? I love that. So instead of saying like, well, what's your problem? What's going on with your baby? I say, what's the challenge? Because then I know that there is a solution. I have worked with families that are low income, possibly even homeless, losing their home. They don't know what they're going to do for their next bills. And it is such an honor to work with these families because in working with them, I've learned what it's like to really hustle and survive. I have learned the most ingenious ideas of how to make a meal under $3 for four people in the home. Yeah, talk about skills, right? that is a skill. So a challenge that I have come across is that when the caretaker, once again, it doesn't necessarily mean the mother or the father, doesn't understand what is going on with the infant. What is it that the baby needs in the time, or is this normal? Milestones. Do you ladies know that definition, milestones? You went over it in your textbook? Yeah. Milestones are important for an infant because if the child doesn't meet certain points of development, something's not right, something's wrong. And the challenge I have come across is that parents don't know that. Caretakers don't know, is this normal, is this not? So crawling. When is an appropriate time for a baby to start crawling?
Remember we went over that.
Couple of months, let's be more specific. A couple of months,
remember.
A couple of months could be like 1 month or a year old.
Like 6.
Yes, exactly. 6 months is a average okay. And you're gonna have some go-getters, and you're gonna have some that are a little slower to get there. But it's a range, right? It's more like the average weight for health, right? They give you like, okay, slow down on the Cheetos, but you're okay, like, right? So crawling is very important at 6 months-ish, the ISH, right, at the end. What about talking? What's the milestone for that, ladies?
Like, just like saying, like speaking in general, or like actually like talk words.
Attempting to talk. That mama, dada.
We haven't gone over that yet.
Okay, so it's around 12 months. It's around the year mark. So once again, just around there, right? So maybe even like you have an early starter at 11 months. You have a late bloomer at like 13, 14 months. But if they're 2, 3, and they can't even ask for water, what do you think is the problem? What is the challenge there? Absolutely, they're developmentally delayed. Something is going wrong, right? So that is the biggest challenge I have, that most people, the entire population, is not educated on infant development. I find it interesting as a provider of mental health that people are having babies and are having 1 baby, 2 babies, 3 babies, and they still don't know, when should my baby talk? When should my baby walk? And they're on child number 3. It's so important that when you're going to take care of a child or have one, that you educate yourself. Education is the key to having a fulfilling and loving relationship with your infant and child, right? So there's different milestones. There's motor skills, right? The walking, the talking, but there's also social skills too. And a lot of people would say that, well, those don't start until you're a toddler, and you learn that when somebody says hello, you say hi back, or you wave back. But social skills actually start as well as in infancy. Social skills could be that if, someone embraces you, it's okay and safe to embrace them back, right? To hug and just to be there with them. The contact. What I mean by social skills is that early on, an infant learns what is okay for space. Intimacy, physical intimacy. Have any of you ever had someone that sits or stands close, like too close for comfort, where you're like 10 feet, no pressure, back up, right? Those are social cues. That's something we learn in childhood and infancy. We learn what is okay and what isn't. In clinical terms, we would call it healthy boundaries. What are my boundaries and what is okay? Infants learn this very early on. And in infant massage, it's one of the most important things for us to provide. What I start out with my classes for the caretakers is asking the baby for permission. Whether their baby is smaller, a couple months, or closer to the year, they ask them. So I say, Soul, is it okay if I give you a massage? And you wait for the baby to give you eye contact. When the baby gives eye contact, like, okay, and you start gooing, and then you see them smiling, that's a go, right? But if the baby doesn't have eye contact with you, and the baby's just all over the place, and I'm not having it today, you need to respect that. You need to respect that a baby also feels. They just don't have the words yet to tell you, like, 10 feet, no pressure, I'm not ready, Mom. How about if the hands are cold when you're touching an infant? That goes back back to our needs. I don't know about you ladies, but if you go to the doctor or somewhere, it's not nice when they touch you with cold, freezing hands, right? So what we do for infant massage is that we do this. We warm them up with the oil, and the oil is fragrance-free, so there's no allergies, right? Natural is always best. We warm our hands up, and then we ask the baby permission to be massaged. Soul, can I massage you? And then we start to touch the baby. And there's a pattern that we use for the massage. And like I said, it's definitely more in depth than what I can provide today to you ladies. But it's important to know that the way you massage indicates to the body what it is it wants to do. So if you have strokes, even for yourself, if you have strokes that are away from the heart, it's relaxing because you're pushing the blood away from your heart. You're saying, chill, we're good, we're gonna relax. And that's what we call a relaxing massage. Even as an adult, now you know when you go for a massage, right, what they're doing. What if my baby's soul hasn't gone to the bathroom in a day or two? Man, the baby must be uncomfortable. So then, how could I use a natural method? No medication, no chemicals for my baby, but a naturally just healing, touching my baby. What I'm going to do is I'm going to massage my baby with strokes towards the heart. Towards the heart. So leading back to the heart. Why? It's going to increase the amount of blood that the heart is circulating and pumping, and it's going to get the body working quicker. It's like exercising. If you ladies go run after eating, your digestion becomes quicker, correct? Right. So it's the same thing for the baby. So it can help the baby go to the bathroom. So for example, here, this is my son's onesie here. And there's a method that is used in infant massage that is I love you. And here is a great example of the digestive system of a baby. Now, because the onesie's a little big, he's small. He's still a couple months. I'm gonna pull this down so you can see exactly where his little digestive system is. So, right about there. So if you shrink this a bit, work with me, okay? So it's here. So you never want to massage more than up here for digestion. Because the misconception we have is that our stomach is up here, but it's not, right? Our stomach is here and our digestive system is here. So that's what's important to get moving, like, hey, come on, right? And that's what we do with the baby. So the strokes that we have is I love you, and it's in this motion, right? Like clockwork. You want to go with the clock. If you go the opposite, what might happen to the baby? They might get constipated. So know where and how the body works. Once again, education, right? Even with yourself. Do you guys ever feel like you ate something heavy and you're like, man, that just does not feel okay, right? And you can help your body naturally. You go for a walk or you can massage yourself, just as you would do for an infant. If you are more in tune with your body and what's going on with you, you can help others, right? So as you can see here, you have the large intestine and the small intestine there. And it's a nice thing you could tell your baby. So as you massage the baby, you can look at them and you say, I love you. And you can continue doing it. And the baby knows that you're doing it with love and care. It's not in a malicious way or you're not angry, right? Changing the diaper.
And why would that be important?
Absolutely. It's the same way I explained that if somebody brushes your hair and they just do it in a mean way, next time you're like, no way, I'd rather have tangles, right? And you learn that very early on as a child, right? Or if somebody does it really hard or pulls or tugs. And if they do it in a loving manner, but once in a while there's a tug, you have a tangle. You know the difference. As a child and an infant, you learn very early on how to survive. Who is good to you and who isn't, right? So as promised, ladies, I do want to save some time for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and put my son's soul down here. And I think it's very important to check in with yourselves and ask, what came up inside of me? What did this touch? Did I have a memory of my own childhood? maybe a bad experience, a wonderful experience. Questions. This is the time. You're paying for a very quality education here at the Mount. I know, I feed you. So it's important to ask questions. We are in an amazing environment where it's safe and you can ask. Yes.
So going back to the challenges that you face, is there anything like in specific that you face with like Hispanic culture? Because I know that like sometimes you might not, well at least in my community, they might not be like big believers of like, you know, psychology helping their babies.
Absolutely. And yes, that's a wonderful question. So as a psychotherapist, I actually specialize in Latino family therapy. And I trained in that. And the most beautiful challenge and growth I have had is that with Latino clients, and I'm going to expand this a bit more, any culture that has more of a community within family and what family thinks and feels, versus those that are like, oh, see you at Christmas and that's it. Where you have families that are in each other's business, like who you dating, what you doing, like what'd you eat today, right? And they hit you up a couple times a day. In those communities, so I would say, I venture to say, communities of color. In communities of color, my biggest challenge has been education. Because in communities of color, it's more of a struggle to have education on things that we normally don't. The access to the education and the cost. If these services were available free of charge, I'm pretty sure more communities of color, of ethnicities, would have access and be like, oh, my baby needs this, let me get that. But that's not the case. And that's why this is important, because through your education, you can go home and say, you know what, Mom? You know what, Auntie? I learned this today. Let's try this with my cousin or my little sibling, right? You are the hub. You are the change right now in your community. I'm not sure if you ladies realize that, but that is the biggest challenge, providing the education and having them access it. The biggest growth I have had is that when they are provided these services in a native language or a person they see themselves in, like, oh, she's Latina. And then I share with them, yeah, I grew up in a home where we didn't know where the next rent check was coming from. They feel more connected and they say, oh, okay, she gets me. She gets that I don't have time to think about this. I have to work to feed my 4 babies. Does that make sense? Does that suffice your question? Excellent. Anyone else? Question? Yes.
I have two.
Sure.
I have a niece and everything. But she's not a niece, but she told her parents are getting a divorce right now. She's only 2. So I just had a question like regarding like if it is possible for them to like feel their mother's pain, right? Like,
What do you think?
Like I think so, because like when her mother cries, she goes and hugs her. So it's kind of like you see her like, oh, I don't go hug her because I know she's crying, she's in pain. So I was just thinking like if there's a way for her mom to like make it easier for her, to like for her not to be so much like, oh, they're separated.
Absolutely. I am a firm believer that it doesn't matter what language you speak, where you grew up, or what your experiences have been. We read human facial expressions or feelings. You don't need to speak Russian, Cambodian, English, Spanish, French to see that somebody's crying and they're feeling something. So I'm a big believer that the younger a child learns to identify their feelings, the healthier adult they will be. And that starts from day one. Even if you have an infant and the infant is crying, oh, I feel frustrated. What is it that Soul feels right now? Do you feel angry? Do you feel fussy? Are you wet? So probing those questions to a child and even asking yourself, my exam's coming Friday. What do I feel right here, right now? Do I feel anxious? Do I feel excited? Do I feel tired? Check in with yourself. Is that... Yes.
So you were talking about attachment style, and is it possible that you can influence your thinking about a certain attachment style?
Absolutely. Wonderful question. I had a case where the mother went through a lot of trauma in her life. And when we say trauma, like this woman definitely is a warrior. She went through a lot of every type of abuse you can think of. She had it in her life, and she had a child, and that child was 5, and that child learned to be insecure and anxious, an anxious attachment style. They learned to think that the world is a bad place. It's scary. You can't trust anything. So yes, the caregiver or the parent can definitely influence the attachment style a child has, because that's where they learn how the world is. I'm not sure about you guys, but I was told that if I ran around the grocery store, like the boogeyman would come and take me away. So I wouldn't run around, right? You learn to fear the world, but it's a balance. Good caretakers, well-formed, in-tune caretakers will say, hey, you have to be careful, but the world is a beautiful place too. Does that answer the question?
Is there a way you can change your attachment style?
Yes, that's an even better question. That is like the bingo question of the day. I believe, and this is my own humble opinion, yes, you can. It's the same way if somebody wants to lose weight. You know, you have a little extra, little something for there, and you want to lose it. So what do you have to do? You have to put in work. You have to change your diet, you have to exercise, but you have to know what you want. And I think in changing your attachment style, the most imperative thing to do is to, one, educate yourself and know what you want. What do I want with my significant other? What do I want with my family? What do I want in regards to attachment with my coworkers? These are all parts of your life. Some of us spend more time at work and school than at home, right? It's knowing what type of relationship do you want, so you can identify how you can interact with attachment. Does that make sense? So educating yourself. Anyone else, ladies?
Great questions.
Yes. Now is the time to ask. Yes.
Have you ever worked with disabled children or even disabled adults that have children?
So once again, have I ever worked with children that are disabled, one, or worked with parents that are disabled with children? I have actually. I have. And I don't think it's any different than families that don't have a disability in regards to how you care and provide for them as a service provider. I take it in consideration, and what's been helpful to me as a psychotherapist and a facilitator of infant massage is to provide them with a questionnaire. A questionnaire is so important in providing any type of service because you're assessing and you're asking, what do you want? What do you need? I had a case where the mother had a limb that was not the same as others, right? So she couldn't hold her baby the same way. Does that make sense? So if others would pick up the baby easily with 2 hands, she couldn't exactly do that. But had I not asked her or given her the questionnaire, I wouldn't have known that that's not a problem for her. Does that make sense? What was a problem for her is mostly attending to her child when her child cries and when to pick them up, when to let them cry. Where's the balance? So in working with families that have disabilities, it's asking them, what is important to you? Is this a challenged area for you? Is this a strength? In answering that question, one of the most important things you can do in working with anyone for anything, whether you're a hairdresser or you're a clothing designer or an ice cream maker, is asking somebody, what do you like and what are you good at? Because if you work from a client's strengths perspective, things will go much smoother and much better. I'll provide an example so it hits you, ladies. In going to school, if a professor provides proper feedback to you in a strength-based manner, you are more open to receive it. What does that look like? You wrote a paper and it wasn't that great, and the professor comes back to you and says, you have excellent grammar. I barely saw any mistakes. Good job. I need you to complete your paragraphs completely. This is where you can work on, and I look forward to your next paper. How would you receive that?
That was totally good, but we need a little bit of that.
That's it. You got the message. Like, okay, I can work on this. Versus if a professor said, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and I need that ASAP. Very different feeling, right? And that's the way it is with most people. So regardless, when anybody asks you for feedback, the most important important aspect to consider is, am I providing them a strength that they have? It will improve you as a human being, but also as a provider of whatever it is you're going to give others. Even when people ask you for feedback, like, hey, how do you think this dress looks on me? You have great ones in the closet, and that one's okay, right? Instead of, that looks horrible, take that out, right? It's how you treat people. At the end of the day, ladies, what I want to do today is not just teach you about this or provide you with credits for this class, but inspire you to be a better human being. You are at one of the most amazing universities there are, and not just because I graduated from here, but because I myself am aware we have something very special here. We have a sisterhood. This is a female-based and orientated majority of females, and it is a private school. You guys have an education that worldwide women would just love to have, and many around the world don't have this opportunity. Are you aware of that? Yeah, it's an honor just to be here today and even just sit in this classroom in this safe area, right? Any other questions before we wrap up for today? I highly encourage that everyone ask a question, any at all. Yes?
Besides like the massage that helps kind of digestion and the massage that helps with relaxation, like what other massages like help? Like, what other massages do you do that helps with other needs or with the child?
With the infant. So it's not a difference of massage, but I think what you're asking is strokes, right? Like different methods or techniques that we use. Absolutely, there's different kinds. For example, there's one where we help the child with digestion through bringing up their feet. And you pull their feet gently, and then you massage towards the heart for what? Increase blood flow, right? Or away for the baby to relax. So it's different methods. For example, you can also turn the baby around on its tummy, and you can massage from the back, right? So let's pretend that it's bedtime and the baby will not go to sleep. The baby keeps crying. You turn the baby around, hold the baby appropriately, right? And then you can massage the baby like this. Can you imagine what that would feel like for you?
I want that.
Yes! So it's the same for a baby. Yes.
How do you go about with your techniques for children who are a little bit older and like not wanting to touch them, and they're just a little bit older, so they're more aware that like a stranger's touching them.
Of course, that's a great question. And in regards to that, I think what is important is that to always ask a child for permission. And even though they don't have words, read their body language. You could tell when somebody's not about it, right? And it's important to note that it's infant massage, so it's not toddler massage. So if they're already walking around and running, this may not be the right thing for them. However, the parent can continue to use these techniques to help their toddler or young child to relax, to learn how to self-soothe instead of using medication or yelling or just screaming that later is going to create challenges for them, right? So the answer to that is case by case, it's always different, but it's infant massage. So infant is from birth to about till they hit toddlerhood. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And like you were saying earlier, right, how touch can be just really soothing and important. Like think about it, even as adults sometimes, like the mom gives you a hug, right, or just puts their hand on your arm and shoulder, and how that can even be soothing, right? So it may not be the infant massage, but they are already learning about touch and attachment, and where that can still be soothing for them, even if they're older, some kind of touch. With permission, like you said.
Yes, yes. So always ask someone for permission. It doesn't matter the gender or the age or how old they are. You know, some of us sometimes just like, hey, how you doing? Or just ask, hey, it's okay if I have tab, right? Asking permission. So in wrapping up today, ladies, I want to thank you for your time. But like I said, the most important thing here is, did this change you as a human being? Are you going to go out there and tell somebody like, oh, I know what you can do to help your baby? That's what you're going to do to change the world. Because if you're just going to sit here and like, okay, I did the questionnaire, that's not the purpose, right? You are created to have a bigger purpose, as I have. And my bigger purpose is to bring the best version of yourself out. That is my motto, and that is my business model. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.